I'm Felix Levine, and welcome to Unlike Me, where I sit down with fascinating people I have nothing in common with.
And we're live. Brian, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited to have you. It's fun to be able to interview you because I know you, but now I'll get to know you even better and my audience as well. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for taking care of me. First of all, that black lane and the cookies, and I've never received such hospitality ever in my travels as I have for this podcast.
That's a massive.
You should really be a hotelier.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
that's a huge endorsement on the hospitality side.
And it's true.
Thank you. What's something the world doesn't know about you from what's already out there?
I think most people know me through my travels, like through, I would say like 2011. I think I joined social media in 2012 onward. You know, I think an interesting thing about me is like I've always known that I was kind of like destined for greatness. And when I was a little kid, one of maybe my first panic attack ever, I remember sitting in my bedroom and I would always order, I grew up middle class, maybe middle upper class, Philly suburbs. But I always wanted greatness. Like my biggest fear at night was being mediocre. And I so vividly sitting in my childhood bedroom and staring at the pictures of the Mercedes SL, which was like my favorite car. And I would get the brochures and put them all over my room to like visualize the life I wanted. I didn't know at that time it was called like manifesting or whatever.
How old are you?
I was probably like 8 or 9. And I just was like, I will never live in suburbia. I will never live in like, I don't want the cookie cutter life. Like that was my greatest fear. And I was like, well, how am I going to do it? And then I didn't even get into a good college. So then I really had a lot of anxiety of like, how the hell am I going to pull this off? In college, I had ADD. I had terrible grades from the University of Pittsburgh. And I'm like, everyone's going to New York City and getting jobs at investment banks. But A, I wasn't at the right school. B, I had terrible grades. But I always knew deep down, I was like, I'm a hustler, baby. And like, I'll figure it out. I
think your life is the definition of not cookie cutter.
It is chaos, usually managed chaos, but I love it. It's like, it's not conventional, being a single dad by choice, traveling, I have a farm and I also spend a lot of time in New York City and like, I think I've spent a lot of time being like, calm down. When am I going to calm down? But that's not the point. And I am calmed down in a way too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's interesting. But like the life I have today, I knew as a very young child, it's like what I wanted. And I would seethe with jealousy when my richer friends would go to Europe for the holidays. And my family, my dad gave me a 1994 Pontiac Bonneville as my first car. And I hated that car, tan with the big bench seat. All my friends had like cool cars. But you know what? That car saved me because when I was hit by a drunk driver, I walked out. I was the only person in that crash that walked out unscathed. And Bonnie took good care of me.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. The first, though, is when your best friend Haley, I'm not going to spoil the book for those that haven't read it yet, but there's a section early on where you talk about taking college funds or taking funds out of the college fund to go travel to Hawaii with Haley. I guess I just spoiled that part just for a second. But it kind of seems, though, that what's interesting is you understood the power of travel and I guess even just being cultured and going out of your ecosystem at a young age.
Very young age. And I don't really know how when I think about it because my family, like my parents are amazing. They were working hard, 4 kids. My dad had a good job. My mom was a homemaker and then, a secretary. Like they were focused and they're very practical people. We went on trips to Florida and like Outer Banks and I lived a great, great life. But maybe it was watching Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, but I just always knew like the world was this oyster that I like had to travel. So when my friends, my friend Haley, her family would go to the Hawaii every year and her dad would say, all you need to do is just book your plane ticket. Everything else is free. And of course at age 15, I didn't have $1,000 or whatever. And yeah, my parents were like, no, taking from your college fund. My mom laughs. She's like, there was no college fund. Like she worked every year to pay our bills. Like there wasn't. So, but yeah, so I always knew travel was going to be a priority. And in college, I ended up getting in credit card debt traveling, which is really ironic considering I'm now like the world's credit card expert and I did the most moronic things with credit. But I think that also helps me understand marketing of credit cards.
Well, so I think what's also very interesting about this book, How to Win at Travel, that by the time this comes out will also be out or about to be out, is I would even argue that everything that the points guy stands for, everything that you stand for, your biggest value add, in my opinion, is not even the points. It's understanding credit. Because sure, you can save thousands of dollars a year on travel and bookings and all that stuff. But when it comes to your mortgage and the tens of thousands of dollars of a difference that a credit score can make on that, that's, I think, where, and I've heard you talk about this on other podcasts and interviews, that's actually where I think is the most valuable part of what you do. Do you feel that way, or do you think that it's really, your brand is mostly points and people will learn credit via points?
No, and winning at travel, and I think I say it in the book clearly, it's like winning at travel is winning at life. It's learning how to take a system that's somewhat complex and get the most out of it for you. Right. So through like the strategies I outline, okay, here's how you earn points. So earning is one side, redeeming is another side. So I'm going to teach you the concepts of like taking currencies that most people are like, I'll just get a gift card. And instead, here's how you go to Bali, on a $10,000 ticket for what you would get $1,000 in gift cards. And it's like taking that and just knowing the system and getting the most out of it. That is the mentality, and playing within the rules, but coloring outside the lines a little bit, because everything in life is meant to be, I like to call it maximize. I don't call it hacks, because there's nothing in the book that's going to get you in trouble. But yeah, I the joy of what I do, and when my fans come up to me and they're like, I get it now, like I had always heard of these points, and they're like, it's incredible. Like, thanks for looping me in on this inside track that has shown me the world, has made me, all these stories about people who are dating long distance in med school, broke as hell. They knew they'd be making money one day, but like people were like, the points allowed us to get married eventually. And that gives me like incredible joy. But yeah, it's also like the more points you get, the better your credit score, the better your life is, the better your rates are, and I do think being smart about points is like harnessing your spending power, which is what we all need to do. As inflation increases, wages have been stagnant. People need to figure out how to juice what they have, because not everyone can just get a new job that pays you 20% more, and prices are going up without us knowing. So how can everyday people take what they have today and just maximize it to like live a better life?
What did you learn about being in credit card debt in college?
Well, and actually another thing I'd never told anyone, I don't think I wrote this in the book, is I actually took a payday loan at one point when I was, after I graduated college, I was in credit card debt. And then that was when I learned and I refused to take money from my parents. I was making $45,000 a year at Lord & Taylor. I thought that was going to be a lot of money. Moved to Manhattan. I mean, fifth floor walk up, it was $1,000 a month. That's one paycheck. And then it was like I was paying $200 just on the interest. Yeah. So I learned quickly that credit card debt is quicksand.
Yeah.
And then getting the payday loan when I was refusing to get money from my parents, and I was Googling, how do I get a loan? The only loan, I didn't have good credit. So I got a payday loan, and that was the most like insane financial product I had. It was actually, and now, funny enough, years later, I watched a Netflix documentary of the guy who had the payday loan company. He ended up going to jail because what they do, the predatoriness of that loan, there was a fee to pay your bill off. It was an endless cycle of chaotic and impossible to understand rules, literally meant to just entrap people in financial hell.
So you had a fee to pay it off. You paid the
early repayment fee, which was more than your principal. So just imagine that, or similar. It was impossible to pay off. And finally, and then they send you, we're going to garnish your wages. You better settle. I mean, it was
oh wow,
hell. So I mean, and I think learning.
And you're 22 at the time.
Yeah, I'm 22, 23, trying to be financially independent, but just making all of the mistakes. And I had actually been in credit card debt in college. My parents, they didn't bail me out, but they let me take out a student loan so that the interest would be much lower. So then I'm like paying a student loan. I was really stupid with finances for a long time. But But learning how to get out of that, and as soon as you pay your credit cards off, your score goes up. It's all a very easy equation to understand. It's just, in school, we're not taught these core foundations. So I love being the purveyor of knowledge to people when that light bulb goes off. Like the rest of your life, yes, you're going to travel better, and it's empowering to have points, and the airline strands you and you're like, click on 2 buttons and you're home when everyone else is waiting in a 2-hour line to talk to the agent. That I love empowering people to do, to take care of themselves. But yeah, I think this whole game, it's much more than just being able to take a free trip, by getting points.
Do you think that a situation like the one you were in when in your early 20s, that you'd be sitting in the position you're in today without it?
No, because it pushed back to my hustle factor.
Yeah.
So I learned, then I'm like, I need to make money. So I was going on Craigslist. So I was working at Lord & Taylor. I'm in debt. I'm trying to pay a payday loan off. I would go on Craigslist and take like any weekend job I could get. I remember one time I was a sommelier for an Indian singles dating club event at Club Sutra, or like in the East Village. And in my delusional ass mind, I was like, one of my good friends growing up had a vineyard. So I was like, oh, one of my best friends growing up had a vineyard. Like I didn't know anything about wine. And I remember doing this event, and I'm bullshitting so hard, and I cracked the cork on the first try. So I'm this expert. And I remember there's 150 people in this room, and people, like at first I got them going good, and I'm just like, BSing. And in college, I was student body president. So like I was used to speaking in front of crowds, and I knew how to like captivate an audience. Right. And I know using my height to disarm people. Like I had all my tricks. So I thought I was ahead of the game. And then the bartender brings out another bottle. I crack it again. Oh. And the bartender is just looking at me like, she gave me a look like, oh, you're a mess, but I'm going to help you. And then she came out and I was like, oh, this happens with this type of wine. And then I wanted to run the hell out of that room. I was so embarrassed, but I was like, in those moments, you're like, where you want to just run. I was like, no, you just got to puff your chest up and own this. And I was, and I went around to each table just kind of BSing. And I think people probably understood I was like a complete charlatan. But I remember walking out that day, I made my $150, which I desperately needed, and was just like, get the job done, And then I just was like, okay, I can't keep doing these side gigs. I need to make more money in my job. So I like switched from Lord & Taylor. I was like, I got to work for a big bank, because this is 2007. And I remember, once again, my inner imposter was like, well, you went to University of Pittsburgh. No one at Goldman or Morgan Stanley is going to hire you, even in HR. But I would listen to Mariah Carey, Make It Happen. That song is like one of my anthems. And I would go into those interviews and I would just be like, failure is not an option. Like I need to make more money. I need better benefits. And it took months, but I finally got in at Morgan Stanley, which dramatically increased, took a little bit of the burden off. I was able to start getting out of debt. But even at Morgan Stanley, when I was in recruiting, I couldn't get a corporate card because my credit was so bad.
Right.
So I had to embarrassingly email my managing director. And he had to fill out a form vouching for me to get a $10,000 credit limit, which was so embarrassing. But I was like, I need that credit card. I didn't have enough personal credit to even just book a single business trip. So humbling moments for sure. And I think that always I'm very proud of the fact that the Points Guy, we are extremely clear. We don't promote credit cards that are horrible for consumers. We are very clear about paying your bills off in full. In the book, I am ultra clear. Before we get into any of the juiciness of the credit card world, like you need to understand how to win at the credit card game. And if you're going to spend more by getting a new credit line, do not play the points game, because like the interest and the hole you dig yourself in is not worth the trips you're going to get. The best journey of your life is, getting to financial freedom.
How long did it ultimately take you to get out of debt and be done with the payday loan and all of that?
It's funny. I really didn't get out of debt and feel financially secure until I started hawking credit cards at the Points Guy, which is funny. Like
27, 28?
No, I was 20. Yeah. So 22, I moved to New York, but almost 23 because I stayed an extra semester. And then I started the Points Guy in 2010. So I was 27. And then in 2011, it popped off. It was when I made no money on the points guy, and then it was $1 million in 6 months. It was crazy. It was like winning the lottery.
So, because one of the things that you outline in the book, right, is exactly what you just said. Your time at Morgan Stanley, then there's '08. So you went in Morgan Stanley.
Yeah, I joined Morgan
07.
Stanley August of '07. I finally get this job. I'm on the campus recruiting team for the tech division, which is like really important in '08
Right.
or '07 because it's Google's jumping off, Bloomberg, Yahoo. All the tech companies are now recruiting the best computer scientists. So the banks are like, oh shit, we got to like up our game. Our budgets were like endless. It was like spend whatever you need to spend to get the top MIT students to our information session, and then get them. I was flying 50 students a week just to do their interviews in New York, putting their hotel folios on my card. So that was when I was like, okay, I'm not making a ton of money at Morgan Stanley, but I was raking in so many points. That's when like points became a part of my compensation, basically.
And so, and to explain to the listener, it's basically because you had, correct me if I'm wrong here, you had no problems with like doing the expense thing with the faxing and getting it all reimbursed. And so people would come to you and be like, can you?
So eventually my credit line got extended on the corporate Amex, but you had to save your printed receipts. You had to tape them to paper and then e-fax them to like some centralized number. And it was really annoying. But the cool thing about it was you never had to put a cent of your own money.
Right.
So I could charge up $100,000, and as long as and I was maniacal, I would like send in the receipts that day, because even if it took a week or two.
Right.
So by the time the bill closed, that bill had been paid off. So I'm like earning hundreds of thousands of points a month. So all of my HR colleagues, they hated this system. They didn't know I was getting the points. They thought I was like being the hero of the division. I think I won at like one of our holiday parties, like it was like the all-around team worker, Brian Kelly. He does expenses like no one else. And I was like, it's my honor. And meanwhile, I'm like, you idiots. I'm getting like millions of, points a year for free. And that was my points-rich, cash-poor period of my life, where it was cheaper for me to leave New York every weekend and fly first class on points and stay at hotels where I would get free breakfast, free cocktails, upgrades, free wine in the room. It was cheaper for me to fly to London for a weekend first class than it was to stay in New York, where I didn't have the cash to pay when my friends were splitting a dinner.
Yeah.
So like people were like, it was this double life I was living.
And then I think, listening to you, I think your entrepreneurial spirit kicked in with the points guy, right? You started to realize like, okay, I've had these experiences. Even like you talk, won't spoil it, but it's like the first time that your dad asked you to book a trip for the family, and understanding flights and understanding redeeming points. And then you're in debt. So there's it's like a different angle of understanding this world than like even the corporate side and banking everybody's points. And then it kind of feels like all the pieces of the puzzle come together leading up to when you start really the points guy.
Yeah. And so the first time I was like a little computer whiz in the 90s. I was like an AOL hacker, Prodigy internet in 1993. And that was what, at age 11 and 12, I was our computer admin at home, which is crazy to think about, an 11-year-old managing the computer. And so I started booking points trips with my dad in 1995. So that's when me and him figured out that points were a thing. And that was our bonding in the 90s. I had no idea that there was a whole other ecosystem of people globally that were taking advantage of these same deals. Like you used to be able to get American Airlines miles on the back of like Life cereal boxes. So my dad and all of our aunts and uncles would mail us their cereal boxes. So we were doing this points game in the 90s. And then so fast forward, and my dad was a business traveler. So yes, and fast forward, I'm kind of like, all of a sudden now traveling for work myself. It's the Great Recession. So once again, I was in tech. So I was still recruiting full stop. And in 08, 09, business travel went off a cliff. So Starwood Hotels, which was my preferred, they've since been acquired by Marriott. Starwood had all these insane promotions. So the people who were still traveling for business were getting crazy amounts of points and promotions. So it was a really lucrative time. But yeah, I was still only making $75K a year, $70,000 a year, basically living paycheck to paycheck still. Because anyone who lives in New York City knows if you go from 50 to 70 a year, I mean, you never really, even when you get to 200,000 a year, you are still somehow living paycheck to paycheck. But yeah, my entrepreneurial side came out when I still to this day enjoy helping people book their trips. It's like a crossword puzzle.
Right.
So my ex-boyfriend at the time was like, you should just start a travel agency where you help people book points. And that's what the Points Guy was. It was like April of 2010. So the website was just a form. And then it wasn't until June of 2010 that a friend was like, you should start blogging. This is like the heyday. He was like, just trust me. He's like, I'm an SEO expert. I had no idea what that meant, but he set me up with the WordPress template that looked cool. And I had a fraternity brother from college make my logo. It looked snazzy. And then I just started blogging. Never to sell credit cards. It was just to write content. So people who had points and didn't know how to use them would land on this Points Guy. They would email me a form and I'd say, I can book your family of 4, PayPal me $200. It was $50 a ticket back then. And today there are still services that do that. It's like $300 a ticket. Point Me, which I'm actually an investor of, it does that at large scale now.
And so when did you understand that you had a little bit of a gold mine on your hands with the Points Guy?
So June of 2010, I start blogging. And I would say that fall, I started to cover some like really good deals that went somewhat viral. And there was another blogger, the Frugal Travel Guy, and he was in his 60s. So he was a retired school teacher, I think, Rick Ingersoll, still. And I noticed on his website, he was like writing about credit cards, but it was weird links. It wasn't, because I would just write, the best way to get Amex points is the Platinum. And I would see on the Frugal Travel Guy be this like affiliate link. I didn't know what an affiliate link was. I'm like, why are you directing people through link synergy? And he kept the secret for a while. And then finally, he pulled me aside at an industry conference we were at. And he was like a kid on Christmas Day. He's like, if I tell you something, don't tell anyone. Dude, I'm rich. He's like, you can be making money on the credit cards. He's like, you're blogging every day about these cards. If you get into this affiliate agency, they pay you. And he's like, don't tell anyone else because it's going to be a gold rush. And I got in. I started making, it was like first month, $5,000.
So the agency would pay you $5,000.
Well, they would pay me $200 per approval.
Okay, and you were getting $5,000 worth.
Yeah,
of
so at that point I had like 30,000 monthly readers, and every day I'd have like, let's call it 100 clicks on a credit card, and only like 2 would get approved. So $400 a day, or something like that. It was like. But then in April of that year, so I was February of 2011, started making 5, 6, 7, 8,000 a month, and then in April of 2011, I had. My life changed when the New York Times wrote an article about the Points Guy that just like, it just elevated. It was like, it just brought so much traffic to the site. And at the same time, Google SEO was like, oh, this blog that people are really starting to like, all of a sudden the New York Times gave it credibility. So my SEO shot up. So all of my existing traffic just started going up through the roof. And that day I made over 100,000. The day the New York Times article came out.
So you're at that point, you're like 30?
No, I'm 20. This is 2011. This is March of 2011. I was born in 83. So I was 28 years old.
And you just made $100,000
in a day. But remind you, so I started in February, and by August was when I made $1 million. So it's from February to August. And it wasn't until June that I actually got paid, because it's like a multi-month, And my mom was like, this isn't too good to be true. Like,
what pyramid scheme are you a part of?
Yeah. And I'm like, I agree. This sounds too crazy, but she's the only, I never took $1 of investment for the Points Guy, but my parents like loaned me $10,000 just to pay my rent. They're like, hopefully this works out. But I'm like, on paper, I'm owed $429,000. They're like, yeah, from the shady marketing company in Miami. Good luck. And then luckily for me, though, that I remember exactly where it was when I got the Chase direct deposit, $429,000. And it was just, I was in Madrid visiting my friend and just sat and just stared at my phone. Like, there's more money than I'd ever in my life. Yeah.
What does that psychologically do to somebody for the first time when you really, for the first time in your life, taste that success? Also, 4 or 5 years prior, you were in credit card debt.
Yeah.
You probably couldn't have
truly
imagined.
up until then, I was still pretty much still like month to month. That's why when I started the Points Guy in 2010, I was making $500 a month doing these like bookings, right? 10 bookings a month or so. Maybe it was 1,000. I think at one point I was doing $2,000 in a month in like these one-on-one consultation and bookings, but they're so time consuming. It was a hustle. I was working my full-time job, then coming home, being this travel agent, And people inevitably were so annoying. I would find the perfect award space, and then they'd be like, "Oh, my daughter doesn't like to fly on American Airlines angled business flat." I'm like, so what is it? It's like winning the lottery, I would assume. It really changes everything. It's a mind fuck, to be honest, because all of a sudden you're like in a stratosphere, like, you know, your life's changing and your friends know your life's changing and everyone's supportive. But then no matter what, it becomes very challenging to, like, you want to maintain normalcy. Like, I'm going to be normal. I'm not going to let this get to me. But then it's
Were you happier?
for sure. I mean, I'd never been financially independent, and that in itself is, and I was in a relationship with someone amazing, but it'd been almost 4 years. We were drifting apart, but I couldn't leave him because I couldn't afford to leave. Because in New York City, you need like 1 month, second month, third month. Like,
Yeah.
I literally didn't have the 15 grand cash. So I kind of felt trapped in a way. Our relationship was deteriorating. So all of a sudden I have cash, and that gave me the freedom to live on my own for the first time ever, because in college I had roommates. In New York City, I had roommates and these fifth floor walk-ups and cats and smokers and this. And I'm like, I just want to live alone. So I'm 28. I'm cash positive for the first time ever. And I just knew, like, this points guy thing that I was building, I knew we were just getting started.
Did you start to think about, okay, well, I just made 400 grand. This points guy thing is valuable. Let me keep. But did you ever think, like, are you thinking exit strategies at that point? Are you thinking like it's going to be what it ended up being? Or are you just like, let me just lock in, get a new apartment and see where I could take this thing?
It was extremely hard to look forward because it was happening so fast at the time. So within a couple months, so everyone else in the blogosphere was like, wait a minute, the points guy. So basically word got out that affiliate marketing for credit cards was a thing. And it was a gold rush. I mean, within a month or two, there were probably 100 blogs hawking credit cards. I mean, everyone was a points blogger. There was this huge, and so I think what the biggest thing that helped guide me through all of that is I came from a bank, and I understood how banks, big corporations worked in terms of PR, compliance, everything is like, I understood like the power structures at a bank, and like with your clients, you need to, there's also a cover your ass mentality. So what I'm saying is, like, in the affiliate marketing space, we were getting paid to sign up new credit cards. A lot of bloggers were being very bad partners saying, cancel credit cards, cancel, you can get around and screw Amex by doing this weird thing with your application to get more points. Like, they were being greedy to juice their revenue short term. And I saw that and I'm like, this is a car crash waiting to happen, because these banks, like, I'm going to get looped in with all these other bloggers and we're going to get cut out of this program. So I was thinking very much like, yes, I need to be maximizing this, but I thought it was going to go away. I see. For sure. And everyone's like, it's too good to be true. I mean, but I was like, well, until then, let me just keep growing it. So that's when I started hiring people, and, I was making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a month with like a couple part-time employees with no investors. I mean, life was pretty good. Yeah. And I ended up going on a date with the guy who, we ended up just being friends, but he was in digital media. He had run Yahoo Finance, so he knew everyone in the personal finance digital space. And in April of 2012, he was like, you need to meet with this guy, Tom Evans. And I was like, just coming back from Hong Kong, first class on Cathay. I'm like, sure, I'll take this meeting with the CEO. I had no idea it was about acquisition. I think maybe I kind of deep down, but I'm like, he's not, my blog, made a couple $1 million in a year. But like, once again, I was just like, let me just live in this moment. It's going to end soon.
What, 30? At that point,
this
you're 30?
29. Oh, no, 20. April of 2012. So 29 years old.
So it had been around for about a year and a half.
Yeah. So I started making money Feb 11, and then I ended up, so that meeting in April of 2012, I met the CEO of Bankrate, which was a publicly traded company. Bankrate is still
around.
Yeah. It is all about mortgages and getting consumers. They own creditcards.com, which was their mega site for best domain for credit cards. It's like mass consumers getting like cash back and balance transfer cards. So they acquired the points guy within 6 weeks. I went through all the due diligence. I sold my company myself without a banker. I had a team of attorneys. 29-year-old former HR assistant. I'm negotiating head to head with this publicly traded company CEO. It was the craziest.
I thought 400,000 was nice.
So this was like a life-changing deal, and this was like, this was like, money that no matter what happened, I would like, if I didn't blow it, like I would be able to at least take a very long time off and not have to go back.
I'm curious, with the exit process, what were things that either you would have done differently in retrospect, things that you made a priority, and maybe some of your biggest takeaways from, and also your demands as you were going through the process?
Yeah. So I give this advice to any founders leaving so I wanted to stay on with the points guy. I wasn't like, let me just sell this and leave. And I actually had a 3.5 year earnout. So I had to get the full amount of the sale. I had to work for 3.5 years, grow the business. So, I mean, I never took time off after the sale. I got a nice chunk one day, but I still had to work the next day to like get the post going to make it. So one of the funny things is I negotiated to have the credit card spent on my credit cards, which they were like, whatever, that's a random deal point. But years later, that became, and still to this day, is how I ink most of my points. So even after we've been acquired again, like part of my original contract, which has been honored, is like that I get to put a lot of TPG spend on my credit cards, which makes sense because I knew selling to a publicly traded company, I knew their travel policy. I'm like, I'm not flying coach,
right?
And I'm not going to battle every time I need to like. So I negotiated for like the perks. I did negotiate, and I recommended people negotiate, like understand the compensation structure of the company that's acquiring you for your team. Like if you're meant to still manage that team, understand that you want control over how you can like maintain and reward your key employees. Because what I see happening a lot is like you sell and you're supposed to grow the business, and then all of a sudden you're hamstrung by like really, the company may have way different values, and you're not able to hire the talent you need to grow your business. And then that becomes conflict when you're like, okay, I need to hit these numbers, but I can't hire the people because we disagree on fundamentals like, what power do I have to even hire people? Are you going to block the people? Are you going to make decisions for me on? So I think I did a decent job. I still to this day don't regret selling the company. Obviously, seeing where the points guy went, we became we grew massively. So if I would have waited longer, I would have made more. But every single entrepreneur I talked to is like, sell the company, take the cash, especially with all the uncertainty in the market. And coming out of a recession where we're still kind of shell-shocked over economic changes can change overnight, the credit underwriting and whatnot. So, but yeah, it was a while. It wasn't even 2 years from my first blog post that I sold it to a publicly traded company.
What was your mental state at the time? Was it cloud nine, or was there a lot of like stress and anxiety because you still had to, oblige by your contract?
Lots of stress. The whole, selling your company that you created is, a mental roller coaster. I wasn't sleeping. I was like waking up in the middle of the night thinking they canceled the deal. And that's part of the negotiation a lot of times. So they wouldn't respond to my requests. And then I would sit there and in like a state of not knowing, and then just be like, okay, the deal's off. My life's not changing. So you go every day back and forth. Like, it's mentally very, very challenging. I definitely, I remember the day the deal closed and I had like $9 million wired into my account, and I definitely popped some Cristal with friends on like in Miami, and like was just like, this is insane, But I was like to work the next day. I was meeting with financial advisors. I was like, I'm not going to be an idiot. I invested all that money and just like continued focusing on building the business.
I'm curious, even fast forward to today, right? You're still young. You're a dad now. You're successful, tall, handsome, all the things. But what makes you insecure? We all have our...
I think the biggest insecurity now is about being a parent and being a single parent and proving to the world I'm a good dad.
Do you feel like you have to prove to the world
I
you're a good
feel
dad?
like it's in my head because I'm doing something that's so societally different. Like gays having kids, people are accepting, but like a single gay man, like walking into the post office to get Dean's passport, they had never seen a birth certificate with only a man on it because it's always single moms.
Yeah.
They said, everyone come here. And it was like, I didn't take it personally, but it's like, they were like, wow, look, this guy wanted a baby. Like, oh, high five, so like, and yeah, so I think I'm insecure sometimes on like, I know, and by the way, I know I'm a great dad. My son is incredible. He's so, by every metric, like he is happy, he's thriving, he's loving, he's like, I know I'm providing and raising a wonderful child. So, but yeah, I think just reminding myself too that like my being single is okay too. Like people will often say, oh, well, the final thing for you is like getting married, like as if it's like I'm a screw up for being single, when in fact, like, honestly, I know I'm happier than most of my married friends.
Yeah.
And I know when people say stuff like that, a lot of times it's projection, you know, so I'm happy. I think just like taking a breather now at this point in my career, like being able to travel, the things I love, my health, spend time with my parents. Like I have a farm. I mean, I'm so blessed in so many ways. So but I'm definitely, you know, about, you know, worrying about judgment of others around your child.
Mostly from the public eye or people that you care about?
It's in my own head. I mean, people know I'm a good dad and like but it's like it's just a lot to, you know, when we're ingrained these norms and what it is to have, you know, a child. But yeah, I would say, I don't know, maybe I would say that like those are things I think about a lot because I'm confident, like I'm proud of what I built in business and I know I can sit at a table with interesting people and I don't feel like I'm less than. I don't really have, you know, imposter syndrome anymore. I've kind of gotten over the fact. And also think as you get older, you're just more patient. Like I've wanted to do a TV show. I've been through fits and spurts and close and it hasn't made sense yet. And like, it's okay. Like I just have a Zen attitude. Like I know things now, I can wait to do them when they make sense.
Do you think being a father calmed you down?
1,000%. It puts everything in perspective. Like even on stressful days, I just think like my son is healthy, I'm healthy, and I have my parents actively in my life. Like I am, like this is what matters.
Right.
That's my anchor. The other noise will figure itself out. And yeah, and it's helped me cut out a lot of the stuff that was not productive in my life. You know, there were friendships that sort of were running their course, and I think having a child like sped up a lot of that. So yeah, it has definitely refocused me and allowed me to just enjoy the beautiful things in life. Like when my son comes running up and just hugs me, you know, or asks me to do a rhino kiss, which is when you rub your nose together, you know, like that's the type of stuff that really matters.
When this comes out, you'll be a two-time father.
Two-time dad.
What is it about being a dad for the second time that you've learned from the first?
Well, the first time was just such a crazy learning experience. Like, you know, I have 11 nieces and nephews, but I'd never had them overnight, you know? So it's like I have a lot of kids in my life and I love kids, but like, you don't really know what it's like being a parent. Everyone tells you kind of like the minute your child's born, you're never the same again. Like you never quite rest easy. You know, you're always thinking, you know, trying to manage those crazy thoughts of the worst. Like you go through it when your newborn's there. Is it still breathing? Oh my God. I've had so many stories like that, you know, and I was so, rightfully so focused on safety but like now you like learn about babies and like I kind of see the bigger picture having gone through 2 years of development and seeing how quickly they change and also seeing in hindsight like what really matters. Like you're not, as long as you feed them and let them sleep, like there's really not a whole, you know, like you don't need an A+ on like every single thing in those, you know, they're happy, they're fed, they're getting stimulation. So I think I'm excited most now for Dean to have a brother because he's such a lover boy. He loves everyone, everything, animals, people. He chases my dog around the apartment. And I'm like, okay, I'm so thankful. Like it's a gift to him because I have amazing siblings that have enriched my life in so many ways. So yeah, I'm just excited, you know, for what this new adventure will bring.
How does your mentality change? Because there's obviously a lot of content with you and Dean traveling together, which is incredible. But then, does it look all that different when you're going to have a second? Is it just an added seat every time? Do the strategy change?
Yeah, I mean, And I plan on traveling with both. And Dean, luckily now, is getting to the point he has his own seat. I think within 6 months, definitely by 3, he'll be much more like he can entertain himself in his seat. And really, for the first year to 18 months of a child, like the first like 15 months traveling with the little one that's not really running around yet is like not, they're in their car seat, they're on your lap. So it's just, it's just going to be a little more complicated, but you figure it out,
What I'm also curious about with you is, and I think why a lot of people love to follow you specifically on social media, is they get to see things that oftentimes most people don't get to experience. Now, one of the things that I felt from reading the first couple chapters of your book is that, and knowing you, you're extremely generous and you want people around you to feel the same feelings and emotions and happiness and experiences. And I think ultimately realize that they too can travel in La Première and like these incredible experiences, and they just might not know it. Mm-hmm. How do you make a specific effort to, even though you showcase, a beautiful lifestyle in the ways that you travel, to emphasize that it is possible for others? Is that the reason why you wrote the book?
Yeah. The book is called How To. So everything I do, I've never been an influencer. Look, I barely edit my photos. I'm like, the meat of why people follow me is the content, right? It's like
is it the
how do I
unachievable?
actually do it? Yeah, and I want people to achieve what I have. A lot of travel bloggers gatekeep. They don't even put the destination where their beautiful shot is. They don't want anyone else getting it. I'm the opposite. I'm like, take it all. And people in the industry will say, and it's funny because when people start following me a lot, then they'll be like, stop sharing now that I'm in. And I'm like, that's not like, I don't care. My audience isn't like the inside frequent flyer world who, like, many of them think I'm just a sellout and I'm like, great, I am a sellout. I'm selling what has changed my life to everyone else. And I believe I'm just a sharer, like that to me gives me joy. I think also being a gay or single parent, even a lot of people want to become single parents, but the visibility I think is really important. Like growing up, I was in the closet till I was 23. When I grew up in the 90s, all I associated with being gay was death, AIDS, horrible. The only movie was Tom Hanks' Philadelphia, right? That was horribly depressing. And so I think it is important to show that you can have a life of your own choosing, and I think a lot of straight women follow me and have had children, and they've been like, you've helped inspire me. And I'm so thankful I did. Because, friend, let's be honest, a lot of us have trouble dating these days. The apps, there's a lot of reasons. People are successful. They want to be good parents. And you can be a damn good single parent who loves your child and has a great support system and family, versus, many people who bring kids in that don't want them. And, so a nuclear perfect family can raise a much more unhappy child than a child, by someone who really wants them and, gives them an amazing lifestyle. So I think part of why I share, and I do struggle with sharing because of privacy and Dean, and, it is a security and safety. There are freaks out there. So, but at the end, I know so many people get joy from it, and I think it helps people. So, I just can't stop, I still just feel strong at I'll make decisions as we go. Maybe having a second child will make me think differently. But, I just think like being visible with who I am and the life I have, I do believe helps other people.
Now being out and, living life with its experiences, what would you have said to the 22 or 23-year-old Brian who's just about to come out?
Yeah, I would say stop putting it off, because my parents are amazing and they were so good. And the reason I kept not coming out and pushing it off is A, I'm a procrastinator, but B, I was more embarrassed that I had lied, right? Because essentially when you're not coming out, you're like withholding information. You're kind of lying in a certain way, deceiving. You're not being your true self. And I felt like that's not a respectful way to have a relationship with someone who's like given their life for you, So I think there was just a lot of guilt. I wasn't worried about being excommunicated. My siblings were amazing. It was more like, I'm a disappointment. I'm a fraud,
Yeah.
And so I would tell myself, like, set yourself free. Your family loves you. And if people don't love you for who you are, goodbye, good riddance. And those will be painful, but those will be, the people leaving your life to open up amazing opportunities. That's like what life is about. So say, never question doubling down on Brian. You are special. The world needs you. But more importantly, you need you. Like, be there for yourself.
As an entrepreneur, what would you, with now the experience, have told a younger entrepreneur version of yourself? What do you think and I guess to double down on that, what do you think is your biggest asset now as an entrepreneur? Because I think that, people on the internet, they see you as the points guy and if they just briefly skim over, it's points, it's travel. But I think in both studying you, knowing you, it's your entrepreneurial savvy that I think separates you from the pack.
Yeah. I think I would tell myself, well, first of all, I'd say, don't sell. You can do this. Yeah. Hire good people and you're going to have a lot of fun. And trust me, this is the way the economy is going to go and the credit card is going to boom. But without giving myself insider trading information, I would say, and my dad said it so much, even after I sold the company at age 29, like, this is your first act of many, many acts. Like, look at all the acts you've had up until now. Stop telling yourself this is it. You have not peaked. This is just the beginning of an incredible blossoming that you will not even understand what lies ahead. Like, always bet on yourself. You're going to need other people to help you. You're not going to do it all yourself, but like, just know you are special. You have a special quality that people are drawn to you. People listen to you. And speak up, speak more, the more, and that's what allowed me, though, as a points guy. There were 50 other blogs, and frankly, bloggers way smarter than me at travel and points, but I doubled down on speaking to the media, and it was so uncomfortable in the beginning. So I realized that, wait a minute, if I become a celebrity in the media, that's going to be great for the business because I'm going to continue to get link backs from all these top tier sources, which I knew helped Google. But I also realized very early on, when I'm in the marketing meetings with the executives at the banks, as I started going on TV more, I was taking selfies when I went into the office. And I would be like, yeah, senior person, as the younger points guy fans, and I'm doing a whole rally, and that is gold, when you can build a brand that people trust, that people like, that you bring joy, do charity work, you stand for something, you let people into your life. I mean, we are living in the Kardashian age of where we want to know where people stand on things. And like, so opening up your home and your, of course, do it. And I don't believe I do a ton of it. I think I still do less than most influencers in terms of like what I show. And I have no qualms going a week not posting. I don't feel that pressure to do every day. But yeah, I would coach myself to like the business of Brian. The points guy is great, but like, forget, like, the real core asset here is Brian.
What do you feel like are the second, third, and fourth acts of Brian Kelly?
Oh, I'm really excited. So I kind of have a new act that's been happening since the pandemic. I started investing more, and I'd always gotten a lot of really interesting deal flow. Pre-2020, so I was CEO of the Points Group until 2020. We had, in 2017, Bankrate, the company I had sold to, got acquired by a company called Red Ventures.
Okay.
Great marketing company based out of Charlotte. I learned so much. We supercharged the Points Guy business using their marketing prowess, culture. But I burn out. 2020, right before the pandemic, everything happens for a reason. I was not a great leader. As a company grew and grew and grew, I was in front of the camera more. I was pulled in every direction. We launched in the UK. We've got a team in Austin. I mean, I was traveling so much. I was everywhere but nowhere mentally. And I kind of had a come to Jesus with myself, of like, I want to be a dad. There's all these other things I want to do. And what Red Ventures, I respect them so much, is that I went to them and said, I can't keep doing it all. And they were like, okay, we've been waiting for you to come do it. It was like, plenty of other people can run the day-to-day, do what makes Brian special, which is media, like the things that you can't just hire someone and have them go on the Today Show, right? Like, so that was an incredible moment, and a lesson I would give to others, like, your company you work with, if you need to change roles, it's not doesn't have to be imploding the relationship. And in fact, it just deepened I'm still with Red Ventures, excited. They're supporting me through my new phases, my book, which is a personal book. It's not a brand of the Points Guy, it's not a product of the Points Guy, but, keep evolving. So when I stepped down and throughout the pandemic, I had gotten introduced to Encore Jane, who we met at his wedding, who founded Built. And I came on as an advisor. I had, it was the pandemic. We weren't traveling. No. And through friends, he wanted to create a credit card for points, a credit card for points on rent, which I thought was brilliant because the largest expense most young people have is rent. So if we could bring all of that with no fees, that would be a huge win for consumers. And lo and behold, we did it. And this little idea is now, currently worth $3.5 billion and growing rapidly. So that was like a very interesting. And then since then, I probably invested in about 15 companies that are doing amazing things, mostly in finance and travel.
As an exited founder, what do you look for when you're investing in
an
companies?
Exited founder? That to me has been the biggest. Is that
always like the number one criteria before you look at?
No, I've definitely invested in companies without someone who hasn't exited before, but it really helps. Encore had sold a business to Tinder and done investments and done, people can certainly learn that, but it really helps when people, otherwise it really has to just be a business I know. I've invested in industries I'm not aware of, and they generally do not end up well. But when I can understand the consumer need and I get it unequivocally, like that's generally where I invest. I still get approached a ton, but I'm pretty, choosy with kind of where I put my money. So eventually, I could probably see myself running a venture arm, whether of a bigger fund, starting my own. That could be a lot of fun to me because I love watching ideas, take flight and then making a lot of money in the interim and not having to hustle, like a founder 100 hours a week. Because I definitely will never go back to that, especially being a father.
It feels like, I guess, one of the last, though, real hustles is writing this book in a sense, because I'm sure, take me through the process from when you started thinking even, I'll write a book, and I know how much work goes into it.
Yeah. So in 2017, I got a book deal with a big publisher, and book deals take forever to sign. Like it's like months and months and months for like paperwork. They're the slowest industry, and I believe everything happens for a reason. During that time, Bankrate got acquired by Red Ventures in 2017. So as a CEO of a business, I knew I was going to have to do, and our company was much larger then, and I had to get my company through a transition, cultural immersion into the new parent company. So that was like a really busy time, and I needed to focus on it 100%. So I basically threw away my book deal in 2017 with the big publisher. In 2021, I was like, I have all this time. Let me write a book. And then went out to the market and kind of fell flat. There wasn't a huge appetite for travel books, shockingly, in the pandemic. And so patience is something like I've learned, when it's meant to happen, it'll happen. So this time around, it was fall of 2023. I went back out again with a refresh pitch, refresh book idea. I wrote a sample book, chapter, et cetera. And then the market loved it. And there was a bidding war with all the top publishing agents, which was really amazing. And then it was like December 1, I signed my deal with Simon & Schuster. And I'm a blogger. I don't write that much for the site anymore. So I kind of had self-doubt, like, can I write this book? I had hired ghostwriters in the past, and whatever they would write I'm very particular with the quality, my voice. So my editor said, well, write a chapter over the holiday break. I'll read it in January, and I'll tell you if you need to hire a ghostwriter. So I did. He was like, you don't need a ghostwriter. He's like, you need an editor, which is what I do, So I did end up hiring like assistant writer researchers. So like when I would do my interviews, they would help write it up, smooth my thoughts out. So I had partners on writing. So from January through, I turned my first manuscript in May, and it was pretty rough. Didn't have the last chapter, but I was like, hey, I was expecting it to come back ripped to shreds, and they were like, no, this is pretty good. And it was like a first pass edit where I actually, once again, had imposter syndrome. We're like, no, this can't be. I'm waiting for the huge, this is a mess, redo it. So from May and I just finalized it in October, back and forth edits. I had to stop finally going through it because every single time I went through it, I was just changing stuff and it was driving them crazy. So now, so it'll go to print in November and hit shelves February 4th.
In reading the first couple chapters, I think my favorite aspect of it, especially knowing you, is that it fully feels like you're just speaking. Yeah. Like it feels like Brian Kelly sat down, wrote the book, and it's also, not to give it away, but it really takes you from like literally the day that you're born, your mom getting in her 1973 Gran Torino to the hospital, up until, and the first time you understand points, the moments that shape your life, both as a young man, but also as an entrepreneur, and ultimately how you get to this how to win at travel thesis. And I think what's so cool, especially about your work now, is that and literally anybody can pick up this book. It's not for the rich. It's not for the poor. It's understanding things about yourself. I listened to you on a show where people, even the host, had just gotten their first credit card recently, or when they were just in college and not understand. I have friends of mine who are doing really well, still using a debit card. I'm like, guys, wake up. So it's a very cool book that, it says how to win at travel, but with your thesis, it really is far deeper than the travel. Yeah,
and even people who I learned so much. So there's a whole chapter on jet lag and the science of jet lag, and we spoke to NASA scientists. It was fascinating for me. So much of what I thought I knew about jet lag, and just taking sleeping pills and you'll get and it's false. It's all about light and light exposure, and and I had the book there's fun chapters on etiquette, but also travel health. What are some of the prescription drugs you should travel with? And most people don't even know you can ask your doctor for prescription meds so that you have them when traveling. And especially going to far-flung places, like antibiotics and stuff are really critical to have.
Is there maybe a chapter or two that you feel like is very unique to this book that most either travel guides, blogs, influencers fail to know? Yeah,
well, the family travel portion has never been written before, because I've researched a lot of and most of the stuff in this book has been written in other books, but there's really no books like this on the marketplace, full stop. There's some budget travel books. There's Cockpit Confidential. It talks about airline flying. There's hotel, it's all budget, how to travel on $10 a day. So this book has never been written. But the family travel chapter's lit. I'm sorry. It is, if you are pregnant, thinking about getting pregnant, this will tell you from the time you get knocked up, to the time, your child is graduating high school, everything you need to know, baby moons, when is it safe to travel? We interviewed top doctors. Actually, my IVF doctor is renowned physician, OBGYN, board certified. He gave amazing tips. But then beyond that, it's what we interviewed child safety experts, what can you bring on planes? What can't you? The difference in Europe. Then booking flights for kids, infants, should you book a lap infant? There's so much nuance in using miles and credit cards and hacks. So it's that the family travel chapter is I think the most comprehensive resource. I sent it to a friend who got pregnant, and she's like, wow, in 30 minutes, I get it. There's a lot going on here, but she's like, you've laid out how it's going to go. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of every chapter, but that one is we got the best experts, and I think give people really good sense of, okay, this is when I should be traveling with the kid. And I never say this is what you should do. Here are guidelines. Here's what I did, which isn't exactly what, the CDC says, but that's life, none of us follow every rule to the extreme.
So it'll be available Amazon.
The book is available everywhere.
Okay.
I'm excited. By the time this comes out, we're going to be having really cool promotions for the book. It'll be in Hudson News and I think every airport in America.
Crazy.
In February with some cool giveaways to be announced. But we've got a lot of excitement for the book from the industry. So yeah, I think I want to enjoy this ride, because it's been, I worked the first 6 months of 2023, every single, or 2024, every single weekend, I was locked on my farm writing this book. And it's I'm proud of it now. I am that perfectionist. but it's a great resource. And I think it's the first of many.
To wrap things up, in 100 years, when it's all said and done, what do you want the Brian Kelly legacy to be?
I want people to say this guy helped me make my life better, right? Like this guy taught me how to travel better, how to be a kinder traveler, which I think is a theme of the book. And like, hey, everyone, let's stop being jerks to each other, to employees. That's not how you get what you want. I think I want people to say, I looked up to Brian, like young gay kids or who might not have role models, to say like, I want to live a beautiful life and have kids and travel the world. And like, I know that it can be done. So yeah, if I have positive impact on people and having them explore the world, because I think that's a win, because I think there's too much hatred in this world. I think the minute you start traveling and realizing these narratives that have been drilled into our head about the others, people are all the same. You know, we all want a good meal. We all want to sleep in safety. We want our family to be healthy. And so I think if I can encourage people to travel more responsibly and understand others, I do think the world will be a better place. Well,
I want to thank you because on a personal level, obviously, you know that both Serena and I love you dearly, but you've had, I can say, a positive impact on at least one person, because I really look up to you in terms of you created your own lane, you took your own lane, everything was earned, not given, and you're not just, you know, I think it's very easy for a lot of people who find success, especially early on, to get on a high horse, to have ego, to not necessarily care about helping the people around them. And, you know, you're not just generous, but you're kind. And I appreciate you. And I've learned a lot from you, even in the short time. This Egypt wedding, you know, Serena and I always say the best thing that came out of it was our friendship with you and Lewis, of course. So
that's a whole nother podcast.
That's the one that we don't ever release.
That's the Patreon.
Exactly. But
in an amazing way, by the way. There's no shade there. That wedding was something else.
Literally lifetime experience. But I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm so excited about this book. I'm so excited about your second child,
Cooper Kelly.
And I'm excited for us to have our little son, our little furry friend that's going to come into the world at the same time as Cooper. So thank you, Brian.
Thanks for having me. Safe travels.